When things go awry, many are quick to place the blame, but determining where the fault actually lies is often a bit more difficult. Does it lie with your allies and your leaders? Does it lie solely with the enemy? Or does a majority of it fall squarely on your own shoulders? Often it is a combination of these, but the realization that your hand may have played a significant role in the events that followed can create a heavy burden. But with that being said, I will say spoiler warning for those who have not seen episode 4 of volume 8 just yet. I will not be showing the episode or any clips from it in this video, simply images of the episode and analyzing the events that take place. I will leave a link in the description below so you guys can go to Rooster Teeth first, watch the episode there, and support the series that we all love. Now, the episode starts off back in the prison, where we see Robin trying to lighten the mood a little bit, as Qrow is still feeling absolutely horrible after Clover's death, continuing to stare at Clover's pendant. Robin is likely trying to lighten the mood just for Qrow, because Jacques is obviously someone she hates, and seems to be preoccupied by a fly that happened to get past the hard light dust barrier in the cell, and is messing with him. I don't know if there's actually a gap over top of the hard light where a fly could get in. Likely flies were introduced in Atlas due to cargo ships coming in or something like that, because I wouldn't imagine they would survive normally in the Tundra, but still, he's preoccupied and we're not really concerned with him this episode. We do see Qrow crack a bit of a smile at one of Robin's quips, and she tries to assure him that it wasn't his fault that Clover died. But Qrow blames himself immensely. In his own words, he made a deal with the darkness. He teamed up with Tyrion during that fight, and the end result was that Clover ended up dying, which he certainly blames himself for, as did so many others after that episode aired. A lot of people pointing to Qrow teaming up with Tyrion being the only reason that Clover died, but that situation was actually forced by Clover himself. When Tyrion showed up, Qrow turned his back on Clover and started attacking Tyrion only, thinking that Clover would back him up because, you know, logically, take care of the serial killer first, then work out your other issues. But Clover couldn't get past the fact that Qrow was now a fugitive along with Tyrion, and as mentioned in the Volume 7 commentary, Clover was over-reliant on his good fortune. We see that numerous times throughout Volume 7, and so Clover thought he would be fine taking both of them on. But Qrow was a survivor. He knew that 2 versus 1 is much more in his favor than a free-for-all between fully trained and very experienced huntsmen. So he made the split-second decision to team up with Tyrion. When a battle like that is happening, everything took place very quickly. Things were happening very fast, and he had to make a decision that helped himself survive. He didn't want to go against Clover. We see the shock in his face when Clover turned on him after Qrow turned towards Tyrion, but Clover forced this situation. Qrow does share some of the blame, but Clover does as well. So does Tyrion, and so does Ironwood. The blame is split between all of them, and Qrow is just feeling horrible. But the part that he is honestly most hurt about is that he's gone through his life fearing getting close to people because of his own semblance, because of his misfortune. And now he finally had found someone that he thought he could be around, that he thought he could have a real, genuine connection with, because Clover's semblance made him not have to worry about his own. And now that he lost that, he's on his own again. He's lost everyone that he's ever had that connection with. And then Robin chimes in saying that she knows a little bit about what Qrow is going through, thanks to her own semblance of lie detection. People don't really want to get close to her because they think that their lies and inner secrets will be revealed, and so it makes making genuine connections a bit hard for her. Qrow realizes he never really thought of it like that, and I see that they're building a connection between Qrow and Robin, and honestly, I really hope that Qrow can come to trust Robin and that he can actually have a healthy relationship, friend or otherwise. I do support the overall ship, but I really just want Qrow to be happy, to find someone that he can feel comfortable around, and just be happy for once, because this man has gone through so much crap throughout the entire RWBY series. I just want him to be happy, and hopefully neither of them die. But after that, we see Watts being dragged back into the prison, escorted by 2 Atlesian soldiers, as well as Marrow and Harriet. And Harriet sees that Qrow still has Clover's pendant, and is very pissed off about that. You can't keep that. But Qrow insists that he didn't kill Clover. But apparently all the evidence Harriet needs is, oh, your weapon had Clover's blood on it, so therefore you must have done it. Robin has an easy counter to that though, simply saying, if you want to know the truth, just open my cell and I can use my semblance to show you. Ask a few questions, etc., there you go. But Harriet just wants someone to be mad at. That's all the evidence you need, and Qrow is the easy target to blame. This, of course, pisses Harriet off more, and it almost breaks into a fight as Harriet's about to go open Robin's cell, likely to start a fight, but Marrow stops her, being the reasonable one in the room, and Harriet just ends up storming off. So if Marrow wasn't there, that could have turned into an interesting fight, but we'll leave that for probably later in the volume when Robin and Qrow end up actually breaking out. Likely with Watts' help, now that he's back in that prison, he probably wants to break out as well, and Jacques is just going to be there when everything gets deactivated. But this does raise a question. With Harriet being so angry about Clover's death, this seems a bit more angry than if it was just a co-worker that died, as Harriet seemed to imply back in episode 4 of volume 7. So I think that obviously she had some connection to him. When you're working that closely as the Aesops are, obviously you'll start to care about your co-workers, and I think they were actually more friends than, they led on to Team RWBY. But I'm wondering if there was maybe even more than that for Harriet, at least towards Clover. Maybe she had some feelings for him or something like that, because she is very torn up about this, more so than the other Aesops, and I'm curious if that will be expanded on later in the volume. But now we cut over to Yang, Jean, and Ren as they are chasing the Hound across the tundra. With the Oscar in its clutches, it's obviously heading into Salem. But their bikes aren't really handling the cold all that well, as Ren's bike seems to have its engines starting to fail. Also, none of them can fly, so the most that they can do at this point is just chase the Hound and hope that there'll be some opportunity to bring it down. But Jean has an idea. He uses his shield and the gravity dust in it to launch Ren up to a point where he could use the grappling function of his Stormflower to latch onto the leg of the Hound and try to slow it down with the extra weight. And it does succeed, however, they enter a valley, and Ren is dangling between two rock faces, so you can see how well that would go. Ren starts getting ragdolled back and forth as he's slamming into the rock. He does hang on, by the way, which is pretty impressive, but he's being hit hard enough so that rock chunks are falling from the sides in the way of Jean and Yang. Ren tries to slow the Hound down even further by using his other Stormflower to grapple onto one of those rocks, and it does work to a degree. It slows the Hound down enough so that Jean and Yang are able to catch up to it a little bit, but his Stormflower quickly detaches. Yang is still able to get up alongside it on one of the cliff edges, fires off a couple pot shots at the Hound that doesn't really do anything more than annoy it, to the point where it drops Oscars from its mouth and into its hands, so it can use its mouth to let out a wail that calls for reinforcements. And then within a matter of seconds, tons of sentinels start popping out of the ground, and Terexes come flying in from the sky, as if they were almost waiting for the Hound's call, because they responded extremely quickly. The sentinels were likely just buried and waiting under the ground, waiting for either enough negativity to pop out or the Hound's call, etc. And the Terexes were probably from Salem's army, considering that that's where the Hound was headed. The army was probably close enough by that the Terexes could just respond to it, or maybe they were hibernating nearby or something like that. Regardless, a very fast response time for the Grimm. But this starts to cause a lot of problems for Jean and Yang, as they are still on the ground and sentinels are popping out all around them. Ren does start to try to climb up his Stormflower to get closer to the Hound, and Jean is struggling a little bit as he's trying to slash the sentinels that are around him, and one of them happens to spit acid onto the engine of his bike. So yeah, that's not doing too well. As it starts to fail, he sees two other sentinels pop out of the ground behind him and surprisingly quickly launch themselves at Jean. Jean still had his forward momentum on his bike, even though the engine was failing. It was still going pretty fast, and the sentinels, as far as we've seen them walk at least, walk fairly slowly. But when launching themselves out of the ground, these two sentinels that spiraled around each other went fairly quickly, as they were able to catch up to Jean's bike, forcing Jean to abandon his bike as the sentinels collided with it. And when he jumped, he had some pretty impressive acrobatics. He was able to use his shield as he landed on another sentinel to use the gravity dust and launch himself up to a bridge where Yang was able to grab him, and both of them were able to continue on the single bike to chase the Hound. Though a Terex did get in their way, Jean used the extra hard light dust gadget he got from Pietro's office to use as a ramp so that they could jump the Terex and other sentinels. I don't know if this is a metaphor for jumping the shark in any way. Hopefully not, because it's only episode 4 of the volume, but still, they were able to make it out of the valley and avoid most of the Grimm. However, once they got to the end of the valley, they were met with a cliff. And so when they tried to veer to try to stop, well, the bike just tipped over and sent them both tumbling. As they went falling off of the cliff, Jean tried to stop themselves with crocea moors, and honestly I thought he was about to lose the sword there, but then Ren jumped down to save them, abandoning his chase of the hound, or his attachment to the hound when he was latching onto it, to latch onto Jean's sword and then latch onto Jean, saving them from falling to their deaths. Because after going through that tumble with the bike, it would be kind of difficult for them to deploy their landing strategies, not really being in the optimal situation. And also with the panic and everything like that, probably not the best case scenario. So things certainly wouldn't have ended well for them if Ren didn't jump in to catch them. Not to mention, the rest of the Grimm were still there, and if they survived the fall, they would have had that horde to deal with, so Ren pretty much had to make that choice. He then masked them with his semblance, so the rest of the Grimm retreated, but all the while they can see the hound continuing to fly to the Grimm whale, and they have lost Oscar. But then we cut to the Schnee Manor, where we see Weiss knock on the door and Whitley answering. He's about to go off on all of them, you know, how dare you show up after everything you've done, but Weiss just points her blade at Whitley and says, let us in, don't do any of this crap right now. So he does, and then starts exclaiming that he's worried about the reputation of the family, which all of them are like, maybe you haven't noticed the massive Grimm horde outside, there's more important things to worry about, but Whitley, in his secluded world, has lost all of the staff of the Schnee Manor, now that Jock is gone and of course the chaos is breaking out, and Willow has locked herself in her room, like normal, so I realize that Whitley is on his own in that mansion. For however long this has been going on, even if it's only been like 24 hours since Salem showed up, all of the house staff have fled. Whitley has probably never cooked for himself or done really anything for himself, having the waitstaff do all that. So I realized that he's probably not had food or a decent meal since all of that went down, and he's had no one there for him. He's had no support, really, so I'm feeling really bad for Whitley, not only having to go through his entire life under Jacques' thumb, but also right in this moment, he's probably starving, not knowing what to do, not knowing how to take care of himself, so yeah. RWBY then steps up to mediate between Weiss and Whitley as they're having a bit of a spat, just saying that our friend is injured, we need a place to lie low, we'll be out of your hair soon once we're back on our feet. Whitley does reluctantly agree to this, not like there's anything he can do to oppose them, considering they're all trained huntresses at this point, and so he just simply asks, what do you expect me to do? And so Weiss sends him to his room. Not really the greatest thing. I really think that Weiss is going to go to Whitley's room and have a genuine conversation with him, and hopefully Willow as well, because Willow did advise her, don't forget about your brother, you left him here with us, etc. So I think either next episode or the episode after, we're going to get the exchange between the Schnee family, and things are going to reach a fever pitch, possibly between them. I don't really know how they're going to get Whitley out of there if he tags along with them. They do have the Atlesian ship, so they might be able to use that and get out, hopefully bringing Whitley and Willow along with them, but I have a feeling Willow's going to be left behind. After that, though, we cut back to Jean, Yang, and Ren as they are now stranded in the Tundra. There is no cell phone signal. We did see RWBY try to call Yang at the end of the Schnee Manor exchange, but of course there was no answer, because they're outside of the range of the Atlas communication tower. Since there is no global communication anymore, it's very limited range and signal. But now Jean, Ren, and Yang are having to walk this one last bike to an outpost that Ren supposedly saw when he was in the air hanging from the hound. And Ren is just not very happy. This ends up breaking out into an argument between Ren and Yang, as Yang is simply trying to say, how much farther until the outpost? You said you saw it, right? And he's like, well, you know, yes I did, it's this way, don't really want to waste any more time. He brings up the point that he had to let go to save Jean and Yang, and he's just not happy with the situation. None of them were ready to be huntsmen and huntresses. Ren starts going off saying that they've made so many mistakes, essentially that they are being left with decisions that are way above their experience level, which is making a lot of sense. But then Yang's also countering that we saved Haven Academy. We got the relic to Atlas. Although Ren points out that they did lose it when they got to Atlas, Yang continues saying that if we did nothing, things would be way worse than they are now. And Ren asks the question, how could they possibly be worse? Well, the easy answer to that would be Salem would have destroyed Haven Academy, would have gotten the relic back then. They maybe never would have gotten to Atlas. If they never did anything at all, then Haven probably would have fallen. Atlas probably would have already been destroyed by now. Cinder would have already gotten the Winter Maiden powers. And there a lot of things could be a lot worse than right now. But of course, he did in the moment. And Ren starts going off saying that RWBY is barely more than a child at this point. He points out to himself that he's just an orphan from the middle of nowhere, which is probably going to get brought up at some point, and Jean, this entire time, has been trying to say, okay, you know what, enough of this, guys, our aura's dropping, let's just get to shelter, and Ren turns on him at this point, saying, and you cheated your way into Beacon. Which, I'm glad that this is being brought up again, because it hasn't been brought up ever since Volume 1, so, yeah. But it also raises the question as to when Ren actually found out about this. When did Jean tell them? Because as far as we knew up until this point, Jean had only talked about this to Pyrrha, and of course Cardin overheard it, but, Ren and Nora, to my knowledge, didn't know about Jean cheating his way in. Likely sometime between Volume 4 and now, they had that conversation and he was open about it. And honestly, Jean has more than proven himself as a huntsman, but still pretty hurtful to point that out. Jean is able to keep a level head though and simply says, you know what? If you don't think we should be huntsmen, fine. But I'm getting out of the cold right now. We see that their aura levels are continuing to drop, including Jean's, and if they stay out in the cold, they're all going to end up dying. So he just ends up walking past both of them, and Yang turns to Ren, saying, you're really just going to push everyone away from you, aren't you? Is that your overall goal? Ren just looking down. He is bottling a lot up inside, and it's going to end up exploding outwards in the next couple episodes as well. We're going to end up dealing with that, and things are really not boding well for Ren overall. But I think they may be a little bit worse for the next person we see, as we see Oscar in Salem's clutches now. He's hanging from the Hound's mouth as Salem is there saying, at last we meet face to face. It's been so long, Ozma. But, you know, Oscar hasn't become Ozma quite yet, and Salem realizes this, but then thinks, maybe you and I can have a better working relationship. Oscar does try to fake being Ozma at the beginning, and we see Salem get a little bit angry at him, but moving forward, maybe she can get some information from him. And the most pressing question that she has is the relic under Beacon Academy. I haven't been able to locate it. Maybe you know how to do so. And of course, Oscar responds, I don't have that information. Which he actually doesn't. That's something Ozpin is keeping close to his chest. Likely because Glinda Goodwitch is the relic and is doing something to keep it away, or just simply avoiding Salem's forces, etc. So, there's that. But then the next question, a little bit more simple. How do I activate the lamp? Oscar's response was, all the questions have been used. And so Salem immediately goes full Darth Sidious, if you haven't seen the Star Wars movies, essentially Force Lightning, and sends that right into Oscar's chest. In this case, it's magic lightning, but still, that would hurt like hell. And I'm curious if this is, actually lightning. It's obviously magic, it's something different, but could that charge up Nora's semblance? Probably if it was actually lightning, but it's obviously something different. It's black and different in color, but still, interesting questions. Salem is definitely a Sith Lord at this point, is what I'm getting at. And then Oscar says, I'm not going to tell you anything. Salem simply smiles, though. Well, regardless, I'll get the information from one of you. I don't really care who, either you or Ozma, and, it'll happen eventually. And then, as she goes to leave, someone else walks in to take over the interrogation. And we see Hazel, as he just gut punches Oscar. The Hound ends up dropping him, leaving Hazel and Oscar for some quality time alone, at least between Oscar and Hazel's feet and fists. Which, that's not gonna go very well for Oscar at the very least, because Hazel is still extremely angry. But it does raise the question, Now that Hazel and Oscar are alone, maybe there'd be a chance for Ozpin to take over and Hazel and Ozpin to have a bit of a conversation to work out their past differences. Maybe Hazel will realize that he's made some wrong choices and maybe that'll be a turning point for him, whereas he'll let Oscar escape, perhaps, and maybe make some excuse as to why Oscar escaped. But if that happened, Salem wouldn't buy it in any capacity and would likely just execute him on the spot, which I think Hazel would accept. Instead of trying to flee on his own, he would just accept his punishment. I think that's just the type of character that he is, but that's only if that scenario played out. I do think that we will get some conversation between Oscar/Ozpin and Hazel might find some closure with that, which may cause him to turn sides, or not turn sides, but let Oscar go, maybe then try to help Emerald and Neo escape, but I think that Hazel might be led to his demise this volume. But we'll have to see, hopefully in the coming episodes. And then we cut to Salem as she's walking the halls with her loyal little puppy at her side. And Cinder and Neo are waiting for her. Or Cinder in particular, Neo's just kind of there tagging along with Cinder. And Cinder immediately sees the hound and realizes that there's something different about it, and asks what exactly it is. Salem simply responds that it's an experiment, and she's quite pleased with the results so far. So, obviously, different than other Grimm, and it doesn't seem like it's a Grimm that has been left behind by the God of Darkness or some ancient Grimm. It's something else that she's experimenting with, so likely, as many are speculating, myself included, this hound may be some amalgamation of a human and a Grimm, or some experiment like that to some degree. But Cinder's main purpose in coming to talk to Salem is to express that she wants to go search for the Winter Maiden. She thinks, but Salem cuts her off, and then starts mockingly talking to the hound. Aw, she thinks, she wants, as if she's done something worth caring about that. Completely talking down to Cinder and putting her in her place, which I'm sure Neo must take some satisfaction in, but this also kind of disregards that Cinder did bring her the Relic of Knowledge, though admittedly, if Cinder didn't screw up in the first place, Salem would have already had the relic, so yeah, there's also that. And Cinder, not wanting to back down, simply says, "We've just been sitting around and waiting." But Salem cuts her off again, saying, "I'll tell you when and where you're needed." And when Cinder tries to protest further, the hound steps in and jumps forward, causing Cinder to stand back. And so Salem makes herself crystal clear. You are going to stay here, and asks her blatantly, "Is that clear?" And Cinder responds with, "Yes, without you, I am nothing." And then immediately in the next scene, Cinder is going to disobey Salem. I'm sure that's going to end well. She's talking with Neo, saying that, well, there's just something I want to check on. You know, we'll be back before anyone notices. As I'm sure Tyrion isn't watching this entire scene play out and laughing hysterically to himself at this point, wanting Cinder to leave and then just get her in trouble. Because Tyrion's around there somewhere unless he's already been sent to Atlas or Mantle or something like that, so I don't know why Cinder is thinking that this is going to work out, not to mention Mercury might even turn on her at that point, but Neo is a real mood in this scene, and I absolutely love it. She is not having any of Cinder's crap right now, as she likely realizes what Salem would do if she found out that Cinder left on her own, and Neo would just be punished as a result for helping her, so yeah, not really gonna work out. But Cinder makes a good point. She wants to go check on Amity, because Cinder knows these kids better than Salem does. They wouldn't just give up their plan to save the world. Which Cinder is right on the money with that one. They ain't giving up on Amity, but still, Neo doesn't really want anything to do with that, or at least isn't very impressed. But someone else speaks up saying that if Neo won't go, I will. And it's Emerald still trying to get in Cinder's good graces, which Cinder is kind of pissed off that Emerald arrived there. I don't know if Cinder's trying to get rid of her previous asset or just doesn't care about Emerald anymore, now that Neo is a lot more useful in more situations, I would gather. Though Emerald does exclaim she's been working on her semblance, maybe she can use it on multiple people at the same time and would be useful overall. But Cinder says, fine, how much did you hear? And likely it's going to be Cinder, Emerald, and I'm guessing Neo's going to tag along as well, and this might give the opportunity for both Emerald and Neo to make their break. But the funny thing is, Cinder wanted to go after the Winter Maiden. Salem forbade her from doing that, and simply forbade her from leaving at all. But Cinder is going to go to Amity, and is going to encounter Penny, the Winter Maiden, who at that point might be hacked by Watts, and there's going to be a little situation that goes on there. Possibly an interesting exchange, but considering Cinder is probably going to confront the Winter Maiden, that is exactly what Salem told her not to do, and this is a blatant disobedience of orders, so yeah, Cinder's probably going to be ejected from Salem's faction. Though she is useful as the Fall Maiden, things just aren't going to go well. I don't know what Cinder's thinking. She's really putting herself and her followers, Neo and Emerald, in a very bad situation. So I'm hoping that Neo and Emerald break away right now, and so that they don't suffer Salem's wrath, because she's probably going to kill them. Because Cinder's useful, still as the Winter Maiden. The other two are probably replaceable at some point in the future. So yeah, not really looking that great. And then we cut to our final scene of the episode, where we see Jean, Ren, and Yang as they finally arrived at the Outpost. Jean is able to get the heat up and working, so now they have a brief reprieve to hopefully get some rest and recover a bit before things get even more hectic. Jean takes this opportunity to try talking to Ren, saying that, you know what, you're right. I did cheat my way into Beacon Academy, but I had people around me to show me that I was better than that mistake. And Ren, you have people around you too. You don't need to force yourself to be so strong. If you just keep your feelings bottled up inside, you're only going to feel more alone. Which is something that I'm sure he's becoming increasingly aware of, but isn't ready to actually share his feelings just yet. As he said in Volume 7, he isn't really great at expressing his feelings, but regardless of that, they're eventually going to come out anyways, as they started to this episode. He started lashing out at his friends, his allies, the people who he should be working with. And I'm sure that once he sees what's happened with Nora, everything's going to break down, and he's going to be expressing a lot of emotions at that point. But a few things are going to happen before then. Right now, though, he ends up storming out of the hut to go sit in the cold of the tundra alone. Not really the best decision, but still, that's what he decides to do. As he's leaving, Yang walks in and says she found a spare part to fix the bike. So once she's able to fix it, they will have a way out of this situation. Assuming, of course, that the bike is still in one piece after everything that's about to unfold. But Yang says to Jean, trying to comfort him, that I know you've worked real hard to get here, Jean. Don't worry about it. But Jean is keeping a pretty level head and says, you know what, I get it. I used to push people away too. I kind of understand what he's going through, and Jean is just being a really level-headed person right now. And then Yang asks Jean a bit of an ambiguous question. Do you think she thinks less of me for not helping with Amity? To which, of course, Jean replies, you and RWBY are sisters. I'm sure you'll be fine even if you disagree. And Yang says, right, RWBY. So, of course, Yang was referring to Blake when asking this question, but Jean had no real way of knowing that, considering the last interaction he saw between Yang and the rest of her team was Yang and RWBY getting in a heated argument. Sure, Blake and Weiss went along with RWBY, but it seems like Yang and RWBY are the more prominent problem at the moment. But it does seem like Yang is really worried about Blake. Jean does express at this time that he really needs to get some rest, but he's worried about Ren. Yang says, go ahead, I'll make sure that Ren doesn't brood himself to death out in the cold. But Jean is worried that things are going to get worse before they get better. And then the episode ends as it zooms out to a nearby plain of ice, as the ice is cracking and likely something is going to emerge from the depths that has been slumbering beneath the ice for a little while. But that'll have to wait to a future episode, probably next episode. And my guess would be that this is going to be the Alpha Sentinel that was hinted at in the Volume 7 commentary. So I'm really interested to see how Yang, Ren, and Jean will be able to handle an Alpha Sentinel or a really threatening Grimm in their condition. All of their auras are depleted, and they aren't really in the highest morale at the moment, so that'll be interesting to see. Likely next episode or the episode after, but I'm curious to see how it'll unfold. In this episode, there does seem like there are a lot of connections that are hinted at happening. We have Weiss arriving at the Schnee Manor, where she can make another connection with Whitley and Willow, hopefully get them on their side, and hopefully they can all evacuate together, but I have a feeling it's not going to turn out that great for Willow in particular, unfortunately. And as well, I also see a connection being built between Qrow and Robin, which I'm really happy to see. I do like them together and think they would have an interesting dynamic, and hopefully Qrow can come to trust Robin, and that will be a relationship that continues throughout the RWBY series, because, as I said before, he just needs happiness. He needs to be able to find someone he can trust and work with, etc. So I really hope that that pans out for him. We see that Yang is worried about Blake. Jean is trying to mediate between everyone, it seems, and hopefully everyone will be able to come together by the end of Volume 8, but we'll see who makes it to the end of Volume 8. We have Hazel now alone with Oscar/Ozpin. I'm sure that there's going to be some conversation happening there, not just Hazel beating the ever-loving crap out of Oscar. It's going to happen for a little bit, but I'm curious to see how that unfolds as well. Cinder is probably going to be exiled from Salem's faction. I wouldn't be surprised. It already happened to her once, but now Cinder is just blatantly disobeying orders immediately after she gets them, so that's just not going to work out well for her. Maybe Salem will just decide to have the Grim Arm take over Cinder, because if the Hound was an experiment to have Grim take over a human and how well she could control it, well, guess what's in store for Cinder's future? Exactly that. Hound 2.0 being Cinder and with the maiden powers. I'm pretty sure that is what Salem is going to go with, and hopefully Emerald and Neo can get the heck out of Dodge before that happens. Though if Salem's able to control Cinder's arm from a distance, then with Cinder going to Amity Coliseum and trying to do her own thing, then I think the Grim Arm may act on its own or on Salem's will, start attacking Emerald and Neo, as well as Penny, Pietro, and honestly, this sounds like it might be where Pietro ends up dying, sends Penny into a frenzy, and then the hacking might take place when her emotions are out of check. Watts is able to get in, so there's a lot of things that are going to unfold very quickly and very soon. Ren's emotions probably being the ones that are bottling up the most and going to explode outwards. I'm really curious to see what happens when the two teams, the two groups reunite, when Ren, who might get injured in this fight from the Alpha Sentinel, comes face to face with Nora, who's already injured from taking in too much electricity, and yeah, this is going to be interesting to see. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. How do you think things are going to unfold with the interactions between different characters? How do you think things are being set up for the future? What kind of Grim do you think is going to break out of the ice? I certainly think it's an Alpha Sentinel, but could be something more interesting. Perhaps a Grim Shark. A lot of people were pointing out that it was a Jaws reference for that poster, which makes a lot of sense. I didn't make that connection, but I still think that it could be hinting that a Grim Shark is in the future of RWBY at some point. Probably not breaking out of the ice, but you never know. There's a whale in the sky, so I think anything could be possible with Grim. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video, and if you guys did, make sure to subscribe and join the Guild of the Eternal Flame. Tweet me at PhoenixKnight7, and I'll see you guys in the next video.